In the Netherlands, in Ottawa, Ontario, and then our US office is right here in Durham, North Carolina. On this slide, I've got a couple of project snapshots just to give you a sense of some of what we do. On the top right there, we have pop-up lanes in Berlin, which is a very quick response to the lockdown. These were up within 10 days of being locked down there. We work on safe school zones in Georgia. That's the country, Georgia, not the state, Georgia. We're also working with have worked with the Federal Highway Administration on safe systems guidance, as well as looking at slow streets or 20-mile-per-hour zones within a city. That slide reminds me it says 30 zone. I think I've caught almost all of the metric to imperial conversions, but if there's any questions on speed limits that look like they might be kilometers per hour or words that might look like they're not English, please feel free to raise your hand and let me know. In addition to the project snapshots on the previous slide, we also offer study tours, virtual now. Anyone is welcome to join if you want to get a little taste of what transportation systems look like in the Netherlands, capacity building, as well as planning and designing for all modes, all transportation modes, as well as balancing those modes with the important human need for not moving, for just staying in a space, for staying in a quality public space. So for this presentation, we're going to be looking at the history of traffic safety. And as I put that title up there, I realized how mundane that might seem to anyone who is not in this room or not on the Zoom call. But we're going to try to make it, I think it'll be a little more interesting than just a dry history of traffic safety. Also going to include setting the stage for kid-friendly streets. We're going to look at school zones in the Netherlands, as well as traffic education, including traffic gardens, at which point I will hand it over to Mary Jo. So a quick introduction on the Dutch context. As many of you probably know, the Netherlands is renowned for being the sort of bikeable, walkable place that it is. However, this has not always been the case, particularly after World War II. There's an increase in prosperity across the country, which led to a major increase in car ownership and car use. However, the roads and its users weren't necessarily prepared for this, increased in popularity of cars, and traffic deaths increased sharply, which we can see here. We can see quite a sharp increase in traffic fatalities up until the early 70s. And two things happened at this peak that sort of inspired the government to turn things around. The first thing is that public tolerance for people dying in traffic, particularly and unfortunately children dying in traffic, sparked a nationwide campaign called Stop Child Murder, which really caught the attention of government officials. And then the second is that this also coincides with the oil crisis. So from this peak in the early 70s, the government started to introduce road safety measures. Some pretty major ones like we also have here, like seatbelt and alcohol laws, which resulted in a sharp decline in traffic fatalities. But those start to level off. So what we're going to be talking about today comes after the results of these policies start to level off in the 80s and 90s. And that sort of starts to get into sustainable safety, or kind of the Dutch equivalent of Vision Zero. I think Vision Zero has been talked a lot about at the summit, or a safe systems approach, but generally the same idea. And that idea is that traffic fatalities are unethical and preventable, and therefore it's our job as transportation professionals to prevent them. So sustainable safety has 5 key principles, and they're all based on the aim of protecting vulnerable road users, cyclists, pedestrians, youth, elderly, protecting them by design more so than regulation. So functionality, this is the way that roads are organized into different function-based categories, and then that follows with a prescribed design for each of those categories. Homogeneity, this is grouping vehicles of similar mass, speed, and direction together, and where there's too much variation in those, that's where you start to separate them out from each other, so you kind of minimize the results of conflicts. And then predictability, this is creating more standard designs and transitions between different types of roads so road users know what to expect. It creates a more intuitive environment. And then forgiveness, this is acknowledging that road users make errors, and we want to create an environment where if they do make an error, it's not going to result in anything too severe. And last but not least is state awareness, and this is having a really good understanding of what the road in a given situation is going to demand from you, as well as understanding your own abilities in a given moment, and this stems largely from education. So if we're gonna focus on our first one and last one here, functionality and state awareness. So looking at functionality, the Dutch keep it quite simple. We start with our two rows. We have the not built up area or rural areas, and then they also have the built up areas, what we would define as urban and suburban. And then within each of these, we have the same three columns, and these are the categories or function of roadway. So we have our access roads. This is where you have your slow speeds, where people can reach their final destination, residential streets. We have our distributor roads. This is connecting people from sort of this first mile, last mile access roads. And of course, we have through roads or freeways, which are not too different from what we have here. And then each of these functions comes with a sort of a clear prescription for what that active transportation facility should look like. So if we focus on our built-up area at speeds of around 20 miles per hour or lower, traffic can mix on the street. So this is bikes, cars, pedestrians, they can all kind of share the same space safely. And then at 30 miles an hour or higher, they must be separated. They must start to ease into your protected bike lane type facilities. And then any speeds higher than that is really shouldn't be an option for active transportation. They should be quite far removed on a separate pathway, a different corridor or route. We do have similar categories in the states, but we also have a lot of roads that act in this gray area between access and distributor. They they try to do both. They'll be designed like a distributor, a much larger, wider road with faster moving traffic, but then they'll also have lots of driveways or entries to Target or any other big box store. So you get this sort of mix of fast moving traffic with the need for people to slow down and make quick turns at too high of speeds. So we know that injuries and fatalities happen when you get those conflict zones where people are turning or crossing paired with those high speeds. So this division of roadway function allows for access streets to have the conflicts, but they're at those low, not going to hurt you speeds, and distributor roads to get people where they're going a little more quickly. So let's just take a quick look at what this categorization of roads looks like if we were to look at it on a grid. So we see our through roads here with the dark gray lines. We see the distributor roads with the medium gray lines, and the access roads with the lightest, thinner lines there. And so what I want to point out here is how many of these roads are access roads. The majority of the lines on this grid are these smaller, quieter, slower, 20-mile-per-hour streets. They only intersect with other access roads and, in a few cases, distributor roads. There's no connection between the access and the highways. And one of the little tidbits that I learned when I first started working with the company in the Netherlands and exploring this Dutch approach is that 80% of their roads are 20 miles per hour or slower. And so they look like this. They're not all this nice, but still you can sense that this is a very slow moving road. And when I think about that, up to 80% of the roads look like this, it's kind of a mix of feelings. Sometimes it feels like a slap in the face. Sometimes I'm in awe of it. But also I'm just wondering, how did they do this? How did they, have the majority of their roads looking like this, but then also supposedly have some of the world's most satisfied drivers, according to Waze? And they do it with a little bit of what we'll call traffic psychology. So this is a chart based on research by Hans Munderman. He's the father of shared space. And on our left-hand side, on our y-axis, we have our divisions by road type. And I see kilometers per hour. And on the bottom, we have duration of travel. So we see it speeds from 30 kilometers an hour or 20 miles per hour. Again, in urban areas, people are willing to drive the speed for about 6 minutes. Then we need to provide them with a faster route. They start to get kind of eager to move more quickly. And then at a distribution road, people are willing to drive 30 miles an hour or 50K in urban areas for up to about 9 minutes before their patience runs thin, and we really need to make sure they can access a through road or freeway. So if we apply this little bit of traffic psychology back to our grid, we see that each one is accessible with those time frames kind of noted in the staircase in Mundermann. So a car in an access area there traveling at 20 can reach a distributor road within 6 minutes. And this really allows for these sort of traffic calmed islands of access roads, which then eliminates the need for tons of heavy separated infrastructure. It eliminates lots of heavier vehicles in these kind of traffic calmed areas. And so what we've seen with sustainable safety is when we categorize roads according to these kind of three main functions, and then we design facilities for streets based on the idea that below 20 we can mix, above 20 we should separate, we end up with these inherently safe streets that are more intuitive to use, and they generally attract more people walking and cycling, which of course would be a key element of safe cities for kids. So since the implementation of sustainable safety, roadway fatalities have continued to fall. The introduction of the policy in the 90s has resulted in a further decrease in 20 to 40% of traffic fatalities. All right, so if we look at school zones in the Netherlands, I think it shows a different experience to the school zones that most of us are familiar with. So this is a site that we are probably familiar with. We can all kind of picture a situation where you're driving down the road, the posted speed is 35, and then it drops down to 25 because of a school zone. But the design of the road hasn't changed at all. So it's not intuitive to change your speed. It requires paying attention. It requires being mindful of things like this. In a lot of cases, it also requires not being in a hurry. We also see that school entries or driveways are not always located on one of those smaller local access roads. The driveway is often on one of these roads that's really meant to be, or is designed more as a distributor road, moving people more quickly between their destinations. Now this one is nice in the sense that it goes a little further than the 25 we often see. It drops down to 20 miles per hour is good, but a good sign doesn't make up for a bad design. So let's take a look at what a the sort of ideal Dutch scenario might be. So they do a layered approach to a safe school zone. And if we start at 500 meters or just under a half mile out from campus, the entire area becomes a 20 mile per hour zone. There are no through roads, no distributor roads. And so this is where parents would, this is where the kiss and ride would be, or the park and walk would be, or the drop off between this sort of 500 meter to 100 meter distance away. This is where designated routes called child routes begin. This is where kids can we'll say, follow a yellow brick road to school that goes past libraries, it goes past sports fields. And then as we get a little bit closer to campus, this becomes completely car-free. So this is our 100-meter marker, or halfway mark there on the chart. You see more playgrounds, the bike lanes continue, and then at the school we see this is where there's room for parked bikes, parents to wait there outside the door who have walked or biked to get their kids. Apologize, this is a very Dutch slide, so I'll do a quick translation here. In the legend, the route kindlint is basically kid ribbon. So again, that idea of kind of following the yellow brick road. Speelplatz is playground, so any of those little red dots you see along the black lines, the kid ribbon, those are playgrounds. Scholen is school, and then Park Torenfleet, translated to tower flea, so I'm gonna guess that that's just the name of it. Nothing to imply there. So again, here we do see playgrounds and parks sort of out further along that child ribbon route. And then as we're getting to school, they're getting there in these safe sort of cycling and walking facilities. We see a nice wide bikeway for them. There is separation here between the cyclists and the bikeway and the walkway, while there's still room for two kids to bike and skateboard side by side, as well as a speedy kid to overtake them. And then still getting to school along the route, this is where we introduce wayfinding, colorful wayfinding. So in addition to those very traffic calm streets, it's also quite clear that you're in a child-oriented area. Schools will kind of pick a color theme and go with it. And then this is our kiss and ride area. So again, this is ideally around half a mile, but no closer than a quarter mile to a half mile away from the school entrance. And then as we approach the schoolyard, we get into really slow zones. Our crossings intensify in the sense of the design of the crossings. The colors become heavier. Your traffic calming becomes quite heavy. There's very limited automobile traffic allowed here. And of course, your bike parking, nothing too outrageous here, just plenty of it and close to the door. So then getting into traffic gardens and education, the move towards independent mobility starts at a quite young age for kids there, with kids often biking to school on their own by around middle school. In order to get there, to reach that point of everyone feeling comfortable with that level of independent mobility, there's sort of three things that are quite important that we're also familiar with over here. That's first is engineering, the second is education, and the third is engagement. So we've talked a lot about the engineering side of things, so let's look at education. And there are two general loose approaches to traffic education. There's the informal, of course, learning with your parents or caregivers, learning through play, learning by doing, and then there's also the formal, and this is learning within a school or a similar institution. So in terms of formal education, they do offer a traffic safety exam. It's not compulsory, but about 90% of schools participate. It helps schools in providing both a practical and a theoretical approach. The exam, again, is non-compulsory. It's targeted at kids ages 10 to 12. And the theoretical portion of it tests their knowledge in rules of the road, traffic behavior, traffic signs, traffic concepts. And then with the exam, you've got pictures of existing traffic situations, and the kids should respond, who has the right-of-way in this instance, and various other exam type things. I think of it as driver's ed, but more advanced and for bikes and for younger kids. And then the practical exam focuses on cycling, and it's the final exercise that sort of completes their traffic education. In a primary school, it tests how they apply that theory and skills along a route, so you'll have parents or teachers or volunteers at certain checkpoints seeing how the kids are maneuvering if they're applying what they've actually learned. And then presuming they've passed, they get a nice little traffic certificate. So in the schools that do offer the exam, again, that's about 90%, 98% of the kids pass the test. They get this traffic knowledge from both learning in school, from their parents, as well as online quizzes and exercises. In most schools, the education starts in sort of 1 to 2 years before their exam would be taken. In some schools, it starts as early as when kids are 4 years old, so quite early. And then 57% of schools include just sort of throughout, include practical cycling lessons in their curriculum. And then the informal education coming from parents and caregivers, it's expected that most children would learn basic practical skills by the age of 6. A lot of times this is quite earlier, but 6 is sort of when most kids are expected to be able to safely navigate a bike in traffic. They also get experiences like traffic gardens, where learning to navigate the streets with other road users is learned through play. It's learned through absorbing it. I think something that's great about this is that it works really well for different ages. So with different ages being able to work towards different concepts, all in a very safe space. So your younger kids kind of grasping the look left, look right, and then the older kids really thinking about, you know, beginning to merge into traffic. So this image is, I call it a fun size version of a typical Dutch roundabout. You can see the cycle path in red, you can see protected buffers between the bikes and the cars, and then a built up center of the roundabout, which makes it harder to see across. So therefore you're kind of decreasing your speed as these little miniature formalized Barbie Jeeps enter the roundabout where they might be in a conflict with bikes and peds. So obviously not exactly the same as the large size version, but some similar elements here. And then excited to jump over to this slide. This is a draft design that was done for the pop-up traffic garden that Mary Jo is going to be speaking on. Were some restraints with this one, as it's a half-day implementation rather than the previous one as a more permanent installation. But there are two features I think are interesting to note that have made it in here in terms of the thinking about, you know, the sort of life-size design, and that is the legs entering the roundabout. These are coming in at sort of 90-degree right angles, which is something important when we're thinking about roundabout design. It slows your traffic down as you're entering a roundabout, rather than a lot of times I think roundabouts here can be quite scary because there are these kind of nice wide angles and you can enter at a rather high speed, which is not quite as comfortable as this. As when you enter at a 90-degree angle. And then we also have quite a lot of yield signs here, as opposed to what we're maybe more familiar with in the States with more stop-controlled intersections. So that yield control relies more on communication amongst the road users. So I think the biggest takeaway for these kids, you know, whether it's in this kind of more built-out installation or whether it's in a pop-up installation, is that they get to practice communicating with each other. They get to absorb and experience what it's like to share a road with other road users, and build their confidence in navigating a roadway and the rules of the road with other people around them. And so with that, I will say thank you and hand it over to you, Mary Jo.
Thanks, Mary. Terry, if you wouldn't mind coming over, I'm trying to get my bearings here. Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you again, Mary, for that introduction and for all that content that you shared. My name is Mary Jo Gellenbeck. I'm an advocate in active transportation. And when I started my career, it was by attending conferences like we have here, as well as using the internet to gain access to content. And Mobycon was one of those sources that I went to learn more about transportation infrastructure, to understand how Holland created the multimodal infrastructure that you see today, and to better understand how the United States is more of that car-centric design. So a traffic garden for me is a playground with a purpose, and it resembles obstacle course, but because it engages more of the infrastructure used in transportation engineering, it creates that miniature small environment for scaling down to a child's eye point of view. And when I was starting to understand the differences between the United States and Holland, I started thinking that Holland went to the multimodal infrastructure because it was more environmentally sound. Being a nation that is vulnerable to sea rising levels, I thought that this was why they did it. But as I dug deeper, and as Mary pointed out earlier, it stemmed from the parents and the people's frustrations for children being injured and killed on their streets because the way that they had become a car-centric infrastructure design as they rebuilt after World War II. So they're very much just like us. You know, one of the reasons why I became an advocate is because I'm a mom. I'm really concerned about this. And I started hearing that the number one killer of our youth is vehicle traffic, which is stunning to me. And so I know that it's critically important for us to transition, not only because of environmentally, but because we want to be able to live a healthy lifestyle that grows to old age, right? The other thing that I had a perception of is that they were always like this, that Holland was always multimodal. But that isn't the case as well. And what they experienced is exactly what we're experienced. When they became more car-centric, they lost the bike ridership, just like we've lost the bike ridership. It's gone down because our roadways are too dangerous. And so in order for them to transition into this multimodal infrastructure, they understood that part of the leg of a three-legged stool was education. And so they needed to reintroduce bike riding skills, just like we need to do that here in the United States as we transition. Because I know that we're transitioning. Like it's not because we're in this small selected group of individuals, but because I'm hearing it also as in the community at large. And so let me go ahead and talk about traffic gardens. So traffic garden, the name of a traffic garden actually is very similar to Safety Town, which I'm super excited about. It is the brainchild of an American. In the late 1930s, we were experiencing more injuries and deaths on our highways as the auto industry was starting to take root, ownership was becoming, we were transitioning out of that multimodal infrastructure or use of the road space, and it was becoming more dominated by these larger vehicles that can cause more injuries and pain. So a traffic cop came up with the idea of creating these small miniature towns to help children develop an awareness for traffic flow, to increase their safety by being familiar with it. And so the Dutch embraced this concept of these little miniature towns as safe places for children to learn, and the literal translation of their name for a safety town is traffic gardens. And so traffic gardens has become more of the international name, but safety town is its originator, and you can look up on the internet. It's still prevalent here in the United States. If you ask an adult if they're familiar with safety towns, those who have gone there, it's one of their primary memories as a kid. Their face lights up, their eyes grow big, and they just remember it so intently, which is exactly what a garden is all about. It's about planting those seeds in your mind that you can tap into, and they continue to sprout and grow. And so starting with a child young in these safe environments, the concept of what traffic is, we are planting the seeds for them to become terrific members in traffic flow. That's essentially the essence of it. And so when I talk about traffic gardens, I can see that kind of glazed look, and as people are trying to imagine what I'm talking about, and they say, well, why don't you call it a bicycle playground? Everybody understands that. I said, well, I get it. I said, why don't you think of it as the kindergarten of driver's ed? When I said that to my husband, it landed so solidly in his mind. He's like, oh, that makes sense. I get it. But the other reason why I'm really stronghold on the name that Holland has used is because traffic is a very complex word. It's something that you develop through that visceral or hands-on experience. And so when you have a child and you're leading them along the sidewalk, they're really just following you. And when you explain to them, look left and right, they do the motions of turning their heads. Look left, look right, I've done it. But they're not really connecting to why they should be looking left and right. And they move forward. But when you bring it down to the scale of a child's eye point of view, and they're amongst their peers, they connect with the sense of traffic flow at a high rate of capacity. And what I've witnessed in these traffic gardens that I've participated in is a very quick transition from a child who's rolling through the stop sign and going over the crosswalks without a care in the world to within 15 minutes, they are starting to stop at the stop sign. They're looking for people who are coming in either direction before they enter the travel lane. So traffic gardens it is. So what is a traffic garden? I borrowed this slide from Fanula Quinn, a colleague of mine based up in the Washington, D.C. area. She's a transportation engineer by trade, and her services has expanded into the hands-on education format. And she's the founder of a company called Discover Traffic Gardens. And she's laid out very eloquently the different levels, based more on budget, of building an infrastructure or building the traffic garden itself. At the lower section of the screen, I wanted to show you the DIY traffic garden kit that's available at their website. I brought it in, and it's displayed here at the base of the stage for you guys to come up and look at it intently. I will be delivering this traffic garden kit to Durham's Parks and Rec Department, and they will be using it for their future needs as they start to explore how putting in traffic gardens inside Durham. In that kit is a manual, and it has all of the tips and also patterns that empower you to be able to build a pop-up traffic garden in your neighborhood and community. So what grows in the traffic garden is the skills to increase safety on roadways. It's as much about learning to ride a bike as it is about managing the bike. And so what I've witnessed is a sense of self-esteem and the well-being in the child's eye as they play on this particular type of obstacle course. It's also physical and mental strength conditioning. Fanula has created STEM curriculum programs that have enabled middle schoolers as well as 4th and 5th graders to design a traffic garden themselves, so they're applying the math that they're learning in school in developing the patterns. It leads to a healthy lifestyle, as we all know, through physical activity. And there's also an economic gains, and I'll explain that as we go along. And traffic garden also hits the E in transportation, as we know, as education. And so one of our goals in the transportation industry is safety education to reduce conflicts or injuries or deaths on our roadways. But this is early education in the rules of the road, so I do think of it as an entryway into driver's ed. This is something that Holland has experienced. If you provide these, you don't have to wait till the child is 15 before you introduce them to the rules of the road, essentially. If you start them in the elementary grade levels, they will gradually gain the skills to be independent and navigate the roadways as a pedestrian, excuse me, and as a bicycle rider. Excuse me. And then what happens is that when they become a vehicle driver, they're far more aware of the other modes of transportation on the road because they were that. And so empathy starts to is acquired or grows inside the person through this experience. That middle slide, that is a traffic garden pattern that was designed by middle schoolers in the DC area that Fanula had worked with. And they actually laid it down. The slide of the two teenage boys came from my experience working in Raleigh with their Department of Transportation's Bike and Ped division. We did a pop-up traffic garden there in a community, and these teenagers came over out of curiosity, and I put them to work as volunteers, and they were applying the arrows, directional arrows that are used in a traffic garden to assist children with learning two-way traffic. You know, when you tell a child to stay on the right-hand side, stay on the right-hand side, it goes phew. But when you tell the child to follow the arrows, that's such a simple concept for them that they start to follow the arrows and they stay in the lanes. And there's two-way traffic. And so they're actually feeling the oncoming traffic and going with and going against each other. And that's really where the seeds of roadway safety is starting to form in their minds. But teenagers can do this work and develop designs. You're planting another seed in their minds to understand traffic flow. And so I got a call from Raleigh's DOT. They were doing an event in Bike Month, and they had a proposed protected bike lane that was going to go on a road in a neighborhood who wasn't interested in having the protected bike lane on the road. So the department was receiving feedback from the community that this isn't something that we need. We need other amenities from our government. This particular street was selected by the Department of Transportation. They did this big overall arching design. Again, one of those things where you think you're doing well, you think you're planning it, but the community has a whole other different experience. And so by getting into the closeness with your community, you can really receive valuable feedback on what will serve them best as far as transportation goes. So they gave me a call. They said, Mary Jo, we want to do this community event, outreach event. We want to be able to get feedback from the community. And they were going to do a pop-up bike lane. But we also want to have a pop-up traffic garden. We want to have a place where the children can come and draw the community more to their event in order to get more close to the feedback from them. And so what you see up here is the result of that real simple application. We selected a parking lot that was owned by Parks and Rec. And so in this process, we had the community that came together and they started to work on the traffic garden. What I witnessed is, you can see in one corner, the two girls on bikes. They knew how to ride a bike. They were playing on the bikes as I was putting the traffic garden in a chase kind of environment. So they were manipulating those bikes very quickly. They were avoiding people, no problem. And then when the traffic garden event started, I was chatting with them and I said, hey, do you know what a yield means? And they looked at me like a deer with the headlights on. And I knew that they understood the word yield because these are middle schoolers. But in the application of yield on a roadway, not so much, because they haven't taken driver's ed yet. And we just don't talk about transportation on our daily conversations with our kids. We guide them, but we don't really sit down and they don't really get an experience because the roadways are too dangerous in that capacity. So we had the traffic garden circle in the design, and it's important when you design a traffic garden for it to include those traffic garden calming designs, right? So this is what the future is that we want. And I pointed out that the row of triangles are called shark's teeth. They're indicators that you yield. The shark's teeth point to the traffic that's supposed to yield. So the traffic inside the circle or the roundabout has the right-of-way, and we yield. And so I made a video clip of them doing it, and it was magical. And the process happened is that when they started to figure it out, they were using the traffic garden like members of traffic. And children naturally learn through mimicking. And so you can see the one child who's sitting inside the traffic garden. He's a little bit older, and he's looking at the other one who's coming and approaching from the other angle, and he's talking to her about the crosswalk. He's reminding her, you need to make sure nobody's in the crosswalk. And then what happens is that the youngest one in the bottom corner, you can see that she's stopped. And there is a stop sign there, but we haven't quite finished the pattern yet. We haven't put in the stop sign yet. So we explained to her this bold white line means stop before you enter. And so she was practicing it, and I captured her as well on video. And she couldn't ride her bike. These were a balance bike, and she was kind of walking the bike, and she gets to the stop line, and she had helped put the stop line in. And she stopped, and she stood up, and then she looked around at me with a kick-ass grin. I couldn't see it because it was behind the mask, but I could see her eyes arching. And she was so proud that she had figured out that this means stop. And if you can see in the back part of that picture is a bicycle. And she knows that person's going to come around, and eventually they're going to pass through it. So she does. She waits for them to pass before she enters into the traffic lane. And so this amenity brought together a multiple of sources of departments or public agencies, and also the private sector. And so traffic gardens are also this cross-discipline networking event, which is the foundation of Vision Zero. Vision Zero's approach is that we can't do it in silos, that we have to work together collectively. And a traffic garden hits so many goals of all of these entities here, including the private sector, which is me. I include myself as an advocate, as a community member. I really want to be able to have access to our city services and express my concern that I have for the way that our roads are designed, and that we need to make more investments in traffic calming, as well as add space for protected areas where we can be, live an active, healthy lifestyle, right? So we did the first traffic garden, and you might have been here with Eric Lamb was here yesterday from Raleigh's DOT for the Vision Zero segment, and he came to the traffic garden. He did not anticipate what he was going to see at the first event, but he came up to me afterwards and he said, Mary Jo, this is fantastic. It clicked for him immediately. And on his desk, he had a proposal from Fanula Quinn for a traffic garden in Raleigh. And when he saw the pop-up traffic garden, this worked as almost an exhibit for him. That proposal almost died on the vine. He had about 2 weeks before the closing of the budget calendar. And so he so he got back into his office, and that proposal slipped out from his pile of projects that he's working on. And we used it to fund for a second event with the DOT in Raleigh hosted an event called Stroll in the Streets. It's working very hard to connect all of its public parks through our infrastructure. And so this particular one was hosted between two park, it had two ends. One was Chavis Park and the other was Dix Park. And so our network from the first pop-up traffic garden, which was 4 sectors. We had the DOT, we had Parks and Rec, we had the private enterprise, which was Citrix Cycle, which is our bike share service company, and then we had also the nonprofits, myself and Oaks and Spokes. At this one, it expanded to include Wake Gov. Their Safe Routes to School coordinator, Jennifer Delcourt, joined the team. They sponsored the funding for the supplies and materials. We also, Jennifer recruited the Poe Health Center, who's here in the room with us today. And they set up a tent right next door to it. We had the advocacies, and we also had elected officials who joined us, and we know how important elected officials are in our work that we do. And so a pop-up traffic garden really starts with a clean slate. You arrive with your pattern, your supplies, and within a couple of hours, you have created your traffic garden. And this is what we used here in Raleigh. We must have had over 100 participants. The location was ideal because it was right next to a very large playground, which you can see in the background, which is a magnet already for the community. And so I'll just kind of scroll through some of the photographs from that event. And so in a traffic garden, you build it, and then you demonstrate it, and then you role play in it. And so it's very important that you mimic what you see on the roadways for the children to really be able to plant that seed for becoming conscious members in traffic. You demonstrate, you show them what this symbol means, and you can see me there wearing my safety vest. And in that capacity, I am role-playing. And when you role-play, you increase the heightened sense of pleasure for the children. And so it's no longer words, they're pretending. And so I would walk out onto the crosswalk and I say, oh, I'm a pedestrian, I get to walk first, you have to wait for me. And they would roll around and they'd come up again and they would roll right over the crosswalk. And I'd be like, okay, I'm walking here, nice try again. And you always use those encouraging words when you're in this role-playing capacity. And you can see me in one of them where there are 3 bicycle riders. And I am approaching that crosswalk, I'm entering that crosswalk with complete confidence at this point, because that one bicycle rider on that white bike, our timing could be really bad. He could run into me. But I've been watching them grow into becoming traffic members, and I have confidence that he's going to stop, and which he did. And when I stopped role-playing, I started to notice that the children would actually stop at the crosswalk in front of the Shark's Teeth, and they would be looking at me, waiting for me to cross over the crosswalk. So what I did was I started to invite their parents to role-play. I wanted to encourage the parents to participate in this. And so there's no problem. As you can see, the smallest of them that couldn't really manage the bike, their parents were out there participating. You had the dads who were walking along, just encouraging their kids, reminding them what the street markers are. You have the one dad who is standing there at the very start. He's got these tiered children with him. The youngest one is going to be turning left. The other ones are going to be turning right, and he's encouraging them to go in there and play. So these traffic gardens have this incredible capacity for safety, transportation, as we were mentioning. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be walking to the W.D. Hill Rec Center, which is about a block and a half from here. And the city of Durham has invested in that public park to increase its user-friendliness for the community. It's transitioning from a park that was kind of neglected, very much like in Raleigh, our Chavis Park was kind of neglected. We weren't, and when we put a renewal into Chavis Park, we actually renewed the community's amenity, and Durham is doing the same thing. So when I pitched the idea to Bike Walk NC to do a traffic garden, Dale McKeel with Durham's DOT suggested that I contact the Parks and Rec Department for potentially hosting it at the Rec Center. And I spoke with Andre White. I told him about the work that I did with in Raleigh, and his eyes just lit up. He said, you have this is in our wheelhouse. We are looking for opportunities to engage the community, to encourage more of an active, healthy lifestyle. Yes, we can do this. And so Bike Walk NC, as a board member, I teamed up with Durham's Parks and Rec, and we recruited the Pedal Factory. And the three of us really worked together very tightly to design the pattern. And then the Pedal Factory, Dylan Horn, took leadership for implementing it so I could present it here. And so I used Google Maps to really kind of scout the area. I'm looking for a parking lot or an unused asphalt area. And as you can see in the one lot, they have two of them. I chose the one that's the lighter one. I came up and I measured it. I looked at the pattern that potentially we could use, and I forwarded it to Mobycon. I was thrilled when Mobycon said, yes, we really would be interested in participating in this particular subject. And and as Mary had identified, they changed one of the design elements where I was using stop signs, which is, because that's what I'm really familiar here in the United States, is the use of real control. But what Holland has done over the course of time, so this again, Holland enables us to advance far faster. We don't have to learn as much because they've been learning over the past 50 years of infrastructure design that really increases safety and the flow of traffic. And so Mary's colleague says, I'm going to put yield at the intersections where off of the traffic garden, the short arms, we put yield signs there. And I said, why did you do that? He said, because there are more ways to manage traffic flow than through just hard stops. And as bicycle riders, we know that every time we stop, it really is an increase a conflict for the bicycle rider. It's safer for bicycle riders if we coast, and if we need to stop, we stop. But we're able to approach a stop sign, and if we see, we're traveling at a speed that enables us to see traffic more easily. We recognize that we are the vulnerable bike riders. We may coast through the stop sign, not because we're being derelicts, but because that's safer for us. Because every time you stop, there's a potential that you can lose your balance and fall on takeoff. So the same kind of principles apply with the yield at these intersections. You approach it in a slower speed. You're looking, so your awareness is heightened, as Mary had mentioned earlier, and you continue to proceed forward. So I thought that was really interesting for me to develop more skills in this design component. Because trust me, everything I've learned is through the help of others who have educated me, so I'm just paying it forward. So I took the design, I used Google Maps, and I just did a rudimentary layover onto the parking lot itself to help with implementing it. With the pop-up traffic guard at the Durham Center, Andre White recruited staff members. So they're actually going through the process of training and learning. He invited his leaders in the Parks and Rec community to come. And so he's using this pop-up traffic garden as not only as an amenity, because they've titled it as Bike Safety Fun Day, but as an exhibit for the future traffic garden. And I would not be surprised if Durham moves forward with this investment. And so with that, I'm going to return to the image from Holland's traffic garden. It's like we are peering into our future. I've used that image a couple of times, almost a little subliminal messaging, but I feel very strongly that this product is right in our wheelhouse of transportation. And so with that, you're welcome to contact me at your convenience. I've listed my social media account, Mass Transit Lady, on Twitter. I post a lot of the resources that I'm learning from through the account, and where I got the name is a whole nother story. So with that, maybe we can open up the floor with any questions that Mary and I can both answer.
Do you guys have any questions here in the room? Well, we had one question online for Mobycon, and you gave some great examples. Hang on one second. You gave some great examples of school design and how school design was around those smaller roads. Do you have any recommendations for maybe how North Carolina can build our schools differently?
Ooh, that is a great question. I think and just thinking about the streets that lead up to the school, I think a great starting point would be more dedicated traffic calming in those school zone areas, so going a little bit beyond just posting the lower speed limit signs. And then as new schools are developed, thinking about making sure they are really far back from higher speed, heavier volume roads, so it has that more of a kind of slow street feel in the half-mile lead up to the schools. But I think for existing schools, traffic calming around them would be a great starting place.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to expand on Mary's response. When I saw her presentation, that slide stood out for me because the visual use of color in that space really brings a heightened awareness for the driver who's entering it. Anytime that we can use visual aids, I think is a way for traffic calming as well. So thank you for using that slide, Mary.
Great. The question was, how much space do you need for a pop-up traffic garden, and is it temporary or is it permanent?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. The traffic garden that we're using today is approximately 50 feet by 60 feet. You can, I hate that sound. The guide in Fanula's Discover Traffic Garden kit shows various sizes. So you can have it as small as something that could fit on your driveway, and you can expand it to increase a very large space if that's available. The traffic garden itself, and if I see if I can, with the slide that I grabbed from Discover Traffic Garden shows one that's used in a neighborhood. When we were using the traffic garden at the Raleigh's last event, the parents were very excited about this product. They wanted to have it more. They saw it as an opportunity that they could use in their own personal space, but they also were really excited to use it in the possibility of schools. And so you depending on what your budget is, you can do it where it lasts for a day, which we're going to see today, or it can be more permanent, like a safety town. In one of those slides, I showed the image of a safety town that is being invested in Greensboro. That budget is over $300,000, but it's their second second safety town, and it's being managed by the Department of the police department. So it really varies, it's just dive in and know what your budget is, and can you expand your network to pool your resources. I know that the Poe Health Center's representative, Kim, who's here in the room, shared with me that they were very interested in this product as well. So, the sky's the limit as far as I'm concerned. I hope I answered the question well enough.
Great. Thanks very much. Thanks again for being here today.
Hi, I'm Lisa Riegel with AARP North Carolina. We enjoy working with Bike Walk NC as we work to make our active transportation safer through efforts like the Bicycle Safety Quiz, Vision Zero, and Complete Streets.
At HDR, we're passionate about making North Carolina a better place to walk and roll. Our Salem Parkway project in Winston-Salem upgraded a downtown greenway, integrated a bike and pedestrian tunnel into a highway reconstruction project, and delivered 2 signature bridges. From planning to construction, we're ready to help you imagine, design, and deliver the next generation of bicycle and pedestrian projects for our communities.